Lunar Light Entertainment proudly presents the 100-Day Magical Challenge. HypnoApotheosis.
Let's talk about two different suggestions which we will use in self-hypnosis. And one of them is what we call dependent suggestions. And that is when you say something basic like, as you breathe out, you can relax. That's like, while one thing is happening, another thing can happen. That's very, very common, right? As you relax, you can sink deeper into a state of comfort. Now, I'm not using my hypnotic voice here because I'm not intending for that to happen. But that's how it continues. Like, while you go into the kitchen, can you get me a glass of water? One thing is happening, something else is tacked onto it, you know? If you're going down to the shops, could you swing by the dry cleaners and pick up my dry cleaning? You know? Oh yeah, it seems like a natural thing to do. While you're working on that report, could you also make a few phone calls, right? My job becomes your job, right? And it seems innocuous. It seems very innocent. And because most of us, including myself and yourself, we are helpful in nature. There's solidarity, there's sympathy. I like to be somebody who is helping my fellow man, right? But if it happens a lot, you start to feel like there's something wrong and you can't put your finger on it. But if you know hypnotic language, you understand how suggestions are formulated, then you can start picking up on it a little bit quicker and saying, what is this person trying to do in my life? It happens a lot, I think, between married couples too, right? You know, so that's generally completely beneficial, but it might also be a little bit of a power play, right? Another thing that I really love, this is a sort of a way of creating hypnotic suggestions, is what we call double binds. This is just a little bit of teaser. We'll be talking more, I think, about suggestions and language, but double binds is a beautiful thing. Imagine that you want your child to go to bed. So you say, okay, do you want to go to bed at 8 o'clock or 8:30? Your kid says, well, 8:30, of course. But what is the result? They're still going to bed. You know, do you want to put on your pajamas before or after you brush your teeth? You say to your, little kid, I'll put on my pajamas after. Well, they're still going to brush their teeth and they're still going to put on their pajamas. So it's one of those choices that seems like a free choice, but it's really guiding very, very directly into a final result. So those are the kinds of suggestions that I think everyone should be aware of, that these are suggestions that people might pose to you, and then you make a choice. And because you make that choice, you are following their suggestions. It's kind of mind-bending, right? Once you get into it. So is it good or bad to be suggestible? Do you have an opinion about that?
Well, that's a very good question. As you were illustrating those examples about the double binds, and the first one was called
dependent.
What was the first one called?
Dependent suggestions.
A dependent suggestion.
Yeah.
I thought about it. I thought about an example just recently where there's a certain person I work with, and they've done a lot for me in the past, and sometimes I feel like I want to do a little extra something for them sometimes. And there was a situation we were in recently where I wanted to offer them a ride home, and it just so happens that it lines up that as I leave the office, their apartment is in route of going to the highway that I drive home.
All right.
And so I made the suggestion directly that, hey, I could offer you a ride home because it's en route to where I'm going anyway. And this particular individual has often shown reticence in taking any type of favors from me. though they've
Mm,
given me a lot of favors in return. And
mm.
I think that sometimes people are, some people can be just so overly helpful, but they won't take back what, the return of the favor, so to speak. And so it was really, really great that that was able to work out that way. And so you called it again a dependent suggestion. Is that correct?
Yes, because
And
uh,
would that be an example of such?
yeah, you could say that. I mean, you are since you're going home anyway, why not come with me, right? So that is exactly what we're talking about. Like, since one thing is already happening, um, why not do it this way, right? So there's the path of least resistance almost, right? As you breathe, you can relax. Well, I am breathing, obviously. Well, okay, you can relax. Can, the modal verb can, is quite important because it's talking about potential and possibility, not a certain future. As you breathe out, relax. That's authoritarian, and perhaps people would have a serious problem with somebody just telling them what to do. But it's much more like, in self-hypnosis, the same thing. It's not, you cannot, just like willing yourself to fall asleep. I'm going to fall asleep now. Boom. It's not how it happens. It's one of those, almost like the, what would you call it? The dichotomy, or the idea of the only way to go into trance is to relax and let go. But one more thing that we need to talk about hypnosis is that suggestions can be cleverly formulated, but no one would ever accept something that goes against their nature, right? I could never, this is something that is important for everyone to know, is that I could never hypnotize a vegan to eat meat. I could never hypnotize a teetotaler to drink alcohol, because in their nature and their strong self-identity of something they hold up to be of great value in their life, that is a part of their basic makeup of who they are and how they identify. So those things wouldn't be changed. But if somebody is perhaps suffering from anxiety, and they know that the anxiety isn't helping them, then showing them ways to let go of that anxiety or redirect that energy is something they are already wanting. So just like in self-hypnosis or in hypnotic therapy, setting a goal and a direction of where you want to go with this is extremely helpful, because that's part of the frame. What am I doing here? This time, this 20 minutes or hour of therapy or whatever you're doing, when you have a direction, you have formulated a strong idea in your mind of your motivation, your desire, and your hopes and wishes for the future. And here is a method to make that happen. So although people can suggest different things to you, you will never say no to something that is completely wrong. Double bind. Would you like the steak or the meatballs? The vegan would say, screw you, like it's not happening, right? So yeah. Excellent. Let's talk about one more thing, and that is the model that we usually work on, and that is the model of conscious mind and subconscious mind. How do you view that?
Okay, well, I think that I have a unique take on the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. Now, in most of the hypnosis material that I've read, and some of the greats, Carl Jung and so on and so forth, they delineate the two, subconscious and unconscious, as the same thing. But I separate it into the theory of thirds according to Taoism. So
All right.
in contemplation of it, it's a little bit different. And it's what I really want to get to with the hypnoapotheosis is that I I feel that there's an ideation of the conscious mind, which is the active attentive factor. And then below that is the subconscious mind, which works as a kind of cache or bus for queuing things up out of the unconscious storage. So if we have long-term memory storage being the instinctual level at the very base of the foundation, like the deepest state, even the molecular level, right, the DNA level, then there has to be a mediator. And I believe that the subconscious, I identify it as the subconscious, is the mediator that pulls those essential things out of instinct and brings them into the conscious state.
Interesting. I couldn't really say whether you are right or not. Generally, through hypnotherapy, we work with the subconscious, but even through the, well, let's say this. A hypnotic state is a state that works on probably all levels. I mean, my teacher, Stephen Brooks, a wonderful hypnotherapist with a Buddhist bent or a Buddhist take on things, he has worked successfully with an AIDS patient, and he could help that AIDS patient increase his white blood cell count to increase his immune system. And Dr. Ernest Rossi, he has worked a lot on what they call psychoneuroimmunology, which is exactly what that is. And in that, they work with gene expressions. You know, you have all this genetic material, and some of the genes are dormant or recessive, or they're, you know, resting. The body is not actually using that genetic switch. It's in the off position or it's in the on position. And you can certainly play with it. I don't know how successfully or how long it would take, but you can certainly work with tapping into, and this is quite easy, or it's quite straightforward, I would say, tapping into the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system regulates your heart rate, your sweating, your digestive system, and things like that. Hypnosis has been extremely successful when it comes to dealing with irritable bowel syndrome. So this is something that is happening as a matter of course when you're working with hypnotherapy, like of changing how your body expresses itself. And a colleague of mine in Beijing, a Chinese hypnotherapist, he's working almost exclusively with psychosomatic skin conditions, people who get rashes and warts and things like that, and then helps them reprogram their body or their skin to be nice and smooth and without the itching, without the discomfort. So then you're talking about the unconscious mind. It is a model. My model is slightly different than yours, but your model works. So I think that's the most important thing. Because in hypnosis, if you're saying I'm speaking to my unconscious, then your direction is still deep within. I would still call it a part of the subconscious, because in my model, unconscious is when you're knocked out, you know, like that's unconscious to me. But having said that, when you go into surgery and they knock you unconscious, a lot of what the surgeons talk about during surgery can remain with you. And that has been proven as well in some hypnotic situations and therapy, that the surgeons are right, this is not going to work, this patient's going to die, and then they live. But there's a lot of like sort of a garbage floating around in there still about this health condition is really, really much worse than I thought because of what the surgeons were talking about while you were unconscious. So where exactly do these, delineations go, these demarcations of what is unconscious and subconscious? Hard to say, right? It's a model, and if the model works, work with it, right?
Yeah, sure. And to elucidate a little further on the idea, I get this not from my own understanding, but from the Taoist idea that if we take a jar of water with dirt in it, and then we shake it up, it becomes cloudy. So when the mind is agitated, it's in a cloudy state. And then if you set the jar with the dirt down, then you will see a settling of the mud, as it were. And then the topmost portion. So we divide in Taoism, in Chinese Taoism, it's a form of ancient natural science. Everything is divided into thirds. So the top third will be clear, pure water, the conscious state, right, as it were. And then the middle third will be a murkier type, cloudy settling of sediment. And this is the subconscious. And again, you wouldn't speak directly to the unconscious. You would do it by way of mediation of the subconscious. And then the bottom layer, the sediment, would be the unconscious state. And so when I say that, I actually mean like the physiological composition of mind. In Kabbalah, it's taught that everything is a manifestation of mind. So your bones and your blood and the molecular structure itself, that's the unconscious memory storage, the hard drive, as it were, the silicon of memory that I'm referring to and communicating. But again, it's that subconscious, that area of almost like digital as compared to analog. So if the mind is analog and we're reading code bit by bit, then the digital foundation of that, where everything's available, would be subconscious. And then total hard drive storage or memory storage. And I'm mixing metaphors here, which is probably not helpful, but would be what I refer to as the unconscious, if that's at all helpful in delineating it.
Yeah, I think this could be a very long conversation because it's about mapping, right? It's about mapping, just like explorers, Magellan and Vespucci and Drake and all these others, the way they were mapping the new world and finding the coastlines and going into the jungles and finding the mountains, the peaks, the mines, the resources, the dangers, the reefs, and all of those things, right? So as we are mapping the subconscious, the problem perhaps is that in order to map the entire mind, the problem is that we are in the mind while we're mapping it. It's very, it's like, yeah, okay, I'm going to have an out-of-body experience and then look into my mind. Okay, report back, see what you find, So it is an interesting it is an interesting exercise.
Thank you for watching, everyone, and I look forward to hearing from you about your participation in the 100-Day Challenge. On the next one, we'll be going into deeper levels of trance state. I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you, and goodbye for now.